Okay, namaste. I'm just gonna say hello. I don't want to show my face. um, the twin flame journey. Okay, I see myself as a twin flame, and I met my twin flame in 2000 and when was it? 2009. So So 2009 and we're 2018 now. So this has been like a long road for me. But I don't know in which sequence to kind of tell this in, because there's been so many time warps along the way, and um uh and there's been a lot of timelines that have broken down that I know are cleared now. So I know when I meet my twin now that it will actually be on a normal level, that there won't be huge clashes in time lines going on. But okay, so what I've learned from the twin flame journey is, when I first came across twin flames, I was like so stunned to find so many the same parallels. I thought there's no way, because I mean, I'd convinced myself that it was me and that everyone was right and that I was crazy, and suddenly I started to delve on different philosophies around soulmates and stuff. And I think one of the first people I came across was like um someone, Angelina something, one of the first twin flames I came across. And so anyway, that kind of sent me into a whirlwind of researching twin flames and getting sucked in and to different groups and stuff. And actually, I went through a ream of groups at the beginning, because there was so many falsities that I went through. It was like you had like a million doors, it's like you had to go through a million doors before you get to a decent one, kind of, so um so let me see, like, what I've learned about my twin now, what I know about my twin now, is really hard for me to get to grips with in one sense, in a 3D sense. But in the fifth dimensional sense, I am like a master, I know exactly what's happening, Um, and it's really arduous for me to manage the third dimension and pretend to not be experiencing the things I'm experiencing, when I have this other world that is so ephemeral and out there and involves certain groups of people, and yet in the third dimension doesn't involve any of them, in theory. um and I know I'm speaking in symbology and I haven't quite delved into the details. I'm circling around them. But I what I've learned from my twin flame now is that even when I was really young, he was there. And I got to a point where the separation from him had gotten so intense that I'd gotten to a point where I was kind of on the verge of a breakdown, like a massive nervous breakdown, because I was like, why doesn't this work? Why aren't the pieces fitting together? Like, frustrated from, using my mind and making my mind the maker of all of this, And but then I had scanned back to when I was a child, and I remembered that he was guiding me as a child. He was guiding me in my family. Because I grew up in a really abusive childhood in Catholic Ireland. And this was like 1980s Ireland, so it was pretty oppressive. And so it's really hard to start the story there, because I don't want to start on a negative thing, and I don't want that part to breed, even, but I feel like I'll have to go through it in order for you to understand. And so the main dysfunction about being a Catholic family is the belief around the scapegoatism, like of someone having to die so the rest can succeed. And this was an inherent belief in the system, you know, an inherent belief in my family, that, you know, one person had to die for the rest to succeed. So this was it was totally narcissistic, but like in their defense, I think it was very much bred by the religious faith, you know. And so I would have been, let me see, I was the youngest in the family, but I would have been medicated from when I was a teenager, from when I was in like 11 until I actually, maybe late 20s. And it was kind of, I later had done a lot of research and was in therapy for like 4 years, but basically the therapy was just to convince me that there was nothing wrong with me. So so, you know, I'm jumping a bit to different things, but when I discuss something from the past, I've already lived through the solution of it in many respects. So I seem to be going around in circles, but I'm gonna plow on anyway and see how it goes. But so many of the issues that I've had have kind of evolved. You know what I mean? Like I looked back and I had done some research recently on Munchausen by proxy, and I realized that that's probably what my mother was doing. She was looking for some reason to make me sick so that she could have someone to pity, you know, because that was just her coping mechanism. And so this kind of led me to a lot of insecurities which, when I'm overwhelmed, I will default back into, you know, and then I'll have to find a way to get out of them again, to everybody else's frustration, no doubt. But because I haven't found a sensible way of managing both worlds yet, and I guess this is what I'm attempting to do by doing these videos, you know, or these audio pieces. So I was kind of diagnosed as ADHD, and I was just fed amphetamines for 10 years, over 10 years. And it had gotten to the stage where, but what had happened to me was I was just traumatized. I couldn't function because I was traumatized. I was traumatized in school, I was traumatized at home, I was traumatized everywhere. So this was like 1980s medical way of dealing with things. You just medicated people, and everyone was in denial of all their problems, so we just stuck labels on things and medicated people. So this was extremely dysfunctional. And it led me on different stepping stones, like wanting answers, you know. And it's basically taken the bones of my life to really unearth the solutions to these problems, you know. So anyway, I had gone and I had done a fine art degree, and I did other creative ventures, but I still found that my patterns were destructive, and I wasn't functioning in the way people should be functioning, you know. And I was just getting frustrated with it, and I was blaming myself. And so let me see what happened then. I had come back to Ireland. I had spent some time in Wales, and I'd come back to Ireland. Maybe like begrudgingly came back to Ireland, you know. And I took up martial arts. So my twin flame was my martial arts instructor. So it was really weird, because when I first met him, the first hello, it was like, oh, there you are, you know. It was like I'd been taught, like I know this now because I've experienced it since, but it was like at the time I had a sense of him, in a way that, like, it's like I'd been talking to him in my head my whole life, and suddenly he was in front of me. And in my head, even though I was subconscious, even though in my head I was like, oh, there you are, that's you, there you are, you know. It's like we finally meet in person. So, but to me, but I see at the time I didn't understand this in the way I understand it now. Whereas I would have thought then that all my thoughts were just excessive and pointless, and, you know, I would never have seen my thoughts as kind of valuable, or as having some kind of sense, or, you know, that there was connections to other, that my thoughts were linked to connections with other people. I never at the time would have fully understood that, you know. So let me see. Yeah, so the discipline of the martial arts, I won't go into details, but it was just a really strict martial arts. And I mean that in the best of senses and the worst. You know, it was like, you know, it was such deep teachings. It was really, really deep teachings that the slightest bit of ego would self-destruct. You know, you'd self-destruct. And this is how deep these teachings were. If they weren't respected 100% commitment, then it would either become obvious, or, you know, it was very exposing. It was a very exposing martial art. So if an issue was highlighted, then you would have to accept that about yourself in order to progress. You know, if you meet like a blockade, you'd have to accept that about yourself to progress into the next step. So it was amazing. It was I guess it was the perfect solution for me at the time. And it really brought me deep, deep, deep into an understanding of the world that I would never have had otherwise. And, you know, it was just so deep. Like, it was because of its strictness, it would unearth the layers of fear in you. And I think so, in many ways, I think that's why it clashed with this culture. Like, it clashed with this culture because it's like this culture is kind of more egocentric. You know, it's a bit wild. Like, it's like liberal and democratic, and, you know, but it's very like, it's a different experience, you know. But I actually do think that the cultures would clash in terms of how they value things and the hierarchy and stuff, you know. And the philosophies would clash, you know. So I guess sometimes there would be conflict in terms of what would happen in your conventional life versus what would happen in the dojo, you know. Or so it was just really incredible. It would unearth like things, any kind of sexual repression it would unearth, like. So, and it would be really exposing if you'd done something wrong and it got pointed at you. It would be so exposing. So it meant that you bonded really closely to their peers. So, and it meant you bonded really closely to your peers, but I felt, I guess in the end, I felt that I was too bonded to them. They were like brothers to me, you know. And I felt closer to them than I would have been to my own family, you know. So, let me see. Okay, so like, over the years of training, like, I kind of built up training over a few years, and I guess I just got closer and closer to him because he was unearthing these really, really deep things within me. And like, there was a lot of kind of energy. There was a huge energy involved, and sometimes we trained so hard that I would just be like completely cleaned out every single chakra, like from head to toe, would be cleaned out, and I would just be like, walk out of training going, what the hell just happened? you know. It was because that we got in such a good cooperation with one another that we literally synced everything. Everything would just become synced, you know. So and I guess like I got really, because I was so bonded with these people, I got really attached, you know. And I kind of started to lose value in my outside life, my life outside the dojo, you know. And um what else? So it was the year, and then what happened? Like the connection got really strong, and there was a phase where it was just total bliss, you know, like it was just total bliss. Like I didn't even go out with people. I didn't even go out with friends. I just trained. So it was um 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 so yeah, so let me see now what else happened. Oh yeah, so as well as that, then I gave up cigarettes, and I trained abroad, and I gave up cigarettes. And the giving up cigarettes was kind of a big step for me, because was kind of like my slow suicide that I had since I was a teenager, you know. And so giving up cigarettes was kind of a big deal, because you know, it was just my ultimate sabotage thing, you know, where I just could, if I couldn't take the world, at least I had cigarettes. You know what I mean? So anyway, I gave up cigarettes, and I had to trade them. It was like I traded the cigarettes for the training, you know, because I just thought, well, they're choking me, and they're congesting my chest, and actually the training was doing the opposite. So I just felt like it was almost, you know, it was almost the perfect addiction to trade to a more healthy addiction, you know. So within the following year, I had an injury in his class. But in the lead up to this, I had done a lot of journaling, which I've mislaid, or I badly filed, so I can't seem to find it, root it out again. But it was a lot of detailed stuff around what went on at training and things. And because when we trained hard enough, it would open this huge portal of light. And which was so incredible in many ways. But I think what was happening was I was having these incredible experiences at training, but I didn't have the theory to go with them, you know, and like I didn't know how vulnerable I was making myself, or putting myself position I was putting myself in. And I guess in many ways he didn't either, you know. It was all kind of very experimental. And so I had an injury in the class, but that same week my twin met his now karmic. So like I had felt the connection come in against you know, and it was like as I felt the connection get separated, I had an injury. So I broke my collarbone, and I had a piece of bone taken out of my hip, and I had a really, really tough couple of years getting out of that, and just getting out of it physically, and then getting out of it psychologically. See, this is where it kind of ended. It was like it severed the connection. Whatever connection he had made with her had severed the connection with him. But prior to this, I was having the experience of this third being coming into us. Whenever we would connect energetically, I would feel this third being coming in, like a pink child or something, or an angel, and so this kind of had led me to believe that we would be romantically involved in some way, because it was so intense and such a powerful connection that I couldn't, like, you know, I couldn't deny it outside the dojo. I didn't understand why I should have to deny it outside the dojo, you know? But it was like he had a strict understanding of it being specifically a dojo thing or an in class thing, you know? And he didn't think of it as anything more than that. But the energy and the connection was so powerful. I was amazed that he didn't think of it like that, you know? So, and then part of me does think that there was kind of like that maybe they had fed back how strong the connection was, and that maybe there was an intervention around who he was to be with or whatever, you know. I felt that there was something that was interfering with the connection anyway, you know, because the connection was so strong, you know. Like, even when I spoke to my mother about it, I felt that it was all getting fed back, you know, maybe through the priests or whatever. But I just really didn't. You know, like, I mean, it led me to realize that my family had just repeatedly betrayed me, you know. Like, I would never confide anything in them because everything would go back to the priests or whatever, you know. So since then, I've kind of learned my lesson on that. And so it's just like, because ritualistically, when I trained with him, we would have been shedding timelines, or we would have been ritualistically dealing with the betrayals, you know. But because I was like, because I'd left after the injury, that didn't kind of end well. So when I left, it was like the betrayals were going to start happening outside the dojo now, because they weren't happening ritualistically within it. So it meant that I was just going to get bombarded outside in the real world in a way that I would have been protected in the dojo, you know. So this was it came to a head, just because the tension was really difficult, and then he kind of got aggressive because he knew he couldn't control me anymore, and then I kind of saw through him, really, you know. But like, the thing was, I still think that it's really hard to figure out, you know. It was really difficult to figure out. And so I left, and then I was excommunicated. And so I felt that it was a huge soul contract, because a lot of the things that have transpired in the world since have revealed a lot about what was involved and things. So it was like, it was weird, because I kind of had I kind of rejected him for many years then after that, because I really didn't like what had happened to me, and I didn't feel that I was honoured in a way that I should have been. And it took me a long time to just kind of find some bit of peace with it, or so it was, you know, quite difficult, you know. And I found other clubs since that I've trained in since, but I find that the teachings that I had learned in that were so deep that it actually, you know, I actually intimidated some other teachers that I had, because I had knowledge and awareness that they didn't even have in their martial arts, and they were teaching it, you know. So I felt like a threat to people in every martial arts. And then overcoming my injuries and stuff meant that it kind of I had done some therapy courses that I didn't finish, because they highlighted how dramatically bad my relationship with my family was and how dysfunctional it was. So it was like a domino effect. It was like everything I tried would just fall apart. And it's mainly because the structure isn't honest. The structure is based on a hierarchical narcissistic structure, you know. So like so there wasn't fair distribution of power, you know, in a lot of these institutes that I had gone into, and I had felt everyone had benefited from me because of what I had gone through, but I was never credited for it, you know. So this is kind of more sabotage and more sabotage again. But the thing was, like, and I knew this and I learned this eventually, because once you're kind of linked into the lineage of martial arts, it's like you can't unknow stuff, you know. You can't you know, and suddenly you realize what's happening. You start to see all the timelines, you start to see through all the timelines, and then you start to see how destructive it is when you're unconscious to it, because it takes so long to gain any ground, you know. And you know, so it just, you know, it just comes back to having a discipline again, you know. But like, what was wrong with me was the codependent issues that I have, that I didn't have a sense of self outside of the dojo, you know. And so those difficult kind of codependent things that I'd played out in my family were playing out with the group as well. So, and now I'm in this kind of in-between world where like, I don't know, like, I have this in-between world, and my twin is living this karmic life which totally discredits my life. And like, because you know, because there's very few people that I know that are aware of what's really going on, you know. And so when I meet them, I'm really blessed to meet them, because I know that they know what's happening, even if we never discuss it. You know what I mean? As for the majority of people, well, they kind of go with the 3D thing, and they use that as what's justifiable. But you know, it's like there's people that believe in facts, and then there's people who believe the facts aren't facts. That facts are just kind of make believe. You know, so like, and both arguments are valid, like, you know. So it just depends on what side you're taking. So I had some incredible dreams with him over the years, and it was like he never left my mind or my thoughts, you know. And I would have some really intense dreams where he would be with his karmic and she would be like attached to my groin. And in later years, I started to see the bigger picture of how I was being used again as a scapegoat for their life to seem credible, you know. So because this is how the system works, it will only you know, people gain from other people's loss, you know. This is how it works, you know. And this is because I started to work with homeless people, and I was doing art facilitation for homeless people, and I was just, you know, it was like the same thing was happening everywhere I went, like same. People were in the same position as me, just in different versions of it, or they wouldn't have had the kind of martial arts training that I had, so I would have some way of skinning the teeth to escape it, whereas they would be totally immersed in it with no awareness, you know. So between the martial arts training, which had almost killed me, but that I don't regret because I learned so much from it, you know, and the kind of like religious dogma and curses coming through my family, the lineage of my family, and then trying to differentiate between Catholic curses and Japanese curses, and you know. So and it's all kind of war and killing. It's all war and killing. Like, so I'd see how people would treat me, and I would, you know, analyze how they treat me, you know. And so um you know, so I was seeing it everywhere, like, because it's still not resolved. So, you know, it's almost like it's keeping this dysfunction open as long as there's no connection, you know. So we still haven't found the pieces that will bring us right into that ignition place, into that spark, you know. And it's um it's really complex. It's so complex. Like, let me see, like the dreams I would have had with him over the years were just so intense and ongoing. Like, it wasn't like I stopped dreaming about him for any length of time. um but the ones that would frustrate me would be ones where I knew she was draining me, or she was, you know, it was like she was trying to be me, you know. And it was like I had to relinquish my personality, my intellectual property, so that she could become me in some weird way. Like, and then I saw them walk down the street one day, and they were getting into the car, and it was like they were a clone of my parents in the 80s. You know, they were like, just the way she was holding the handbag, and it's just, and just like the nature of the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, it's like they're my parents, you know. And just, there was lots of timeline shifts that I'd done, and I had joined Kung Fu then, which was amazing because it was much more liberal. Well, the teacher was much more liberal, whatever about the martial arts. But and he would very much let you flow in and flow out. There was no major restrictions, you know. And he's still very much like that within reason, you know. But I think that there's been major conflicts because of the clashes in culture, the cultural clashes and beliefs as well, you know, beliefs as well. Like because went through such extreme trauma, I had to learn fast how it all worked, you know. So, and I think that he's still, you know, I think at the moment he's starting to follow my steps now, because he's seeing that I could see something before everyone else, you know. So, um, you see, and actually it was actually what I learned from my Kung Fu master was incredible, because he really calmed me down, you know. And he would do things like he would walk me the length and the breadth of the city, just so I could talk it out. And, you know, I don't think I would have a symbol of sanity without having met him, to be honest, because I felt like he unwound the timelines by doing that, by doing things like walking me around the whole city for 3 hours, you know, because of my trauma, I had to learn things so fast that it put me in a trauma for a long time. And I would, you know, so he would be unraveling it over and over again, you know. You know, so excited trying to figure it out. And I think that that's why such a long time had to pass before I would really understand it, because I think I was too innocent, and I was being, you know, I mean, if you go high up enough in martial arts, then you can, you know, get yourself into you connect with dangerous people, you know. So I didn't want that, and I'm sure my Kung Fu master didn't want that for me, you know. So I think he was just kind of like, that was his way of kind of maintaining my innocence throughout all the madness that I'm sure he didn't even fully understand at the time either, but he was just doing what he knows to do, you know. So my twin flame journey. But thing was, what was happening when I was starting to realize was, because I had connected with that lineage, and because my family had scapegoated me, it's like they made me the warrior that I'd have to guard the house, you know, which is bizarre. I mean, it's so bizarre, but I mean, I didn't know how else to get out of it, you know? And it's funny because it's like it made me the warrior. So basically the same thing that was happening um back in the early, let's say, 1200s was happening now, and sometimes I would get a twig of what time it was or what timeline it was, and I would see how my family were treating me and even through other people. So it, took a long time for me to just find some way of managing it, So I guess that's not bad for episode 1. But long story short, there's much more for me to delve into in it, but like reading things like Lee and Sherry and some of the other twin flame guys online, I really can't deny that there's something to it, and I guess because my story is so arduous and so peculiar, that I feel like I have something to offer for people who are struggling with something similar, And the difficult thing, I think, that keeps us apart now is I see what we were at the beginning of time, right? And it's like, and it's like he can't see that yet, or he doesn't want to, or he's still immersed in it, or he hasn't been as traumatized as I have been in a way that I can see it. Like I can see what we were in the ancient world, and and he can't see that yet. And when he does, it's going to be really dramatic for him. So because even slight attempts to kind of reconnect have been just like blown out. So like I think it's going to be very dramatic for him, so let me see, twin flames. Anyhow, I'd like to continue doing this journey with you guys, and feel free to ask any questions. You can email me at twinflamesundercover@gmail.com. I hope to do form readings and maybe some constellation readings in the future, and I hope to continue doing journey episodes with you guys until I kind of feel like I've said everything I need to say. But I think that's enough for tonight. So I just like to say namaste and welcome to the channel, and yeah, namaste, good night, thank you.